Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme, exploring some fantastic riffs, moving into a band called Vektor, spelled with a K. We're going to be looking at the album Black Future, which came out in 2009, specifically the track Oblivion from it. I'm expecting black metal based off of a lot of this stuff, but for some reason I had something else in my mind with the name Vektor, so I don't exactly know what we're getting into. Let's just dive in and see what Vektor's bringing to the table today. Definitely not black metal. Oh yeah, this is the Recharging the Void group, isn't it? So progressive thrash is what we're in store for. Yeah, nice little walk down there. Yeah, nice retardando on that walk down, slowing the track down linearly. And then an instantaneous rise back up. This riff is all over the place. Very nice. Nice hints of some classical influence here. interesting to hear so many ideas coming off of the same foundation. Dude, let's scream. Wow. Yeah, so I don't remember if I vocalized this or not, but the intro to this track, it was like 50 seconds, 60 seconds, somewhere in that area. And I'm like, dang, this is a long time to present this idea. We've been it for a while. It's not really evolving in any way. We just have, we have our two guitars doing their thing. It's a really nice duet that they have going on, creating the dyads, but also the counterpoint. They're both doing two different things. And it's a nice idea, but where is it going? The song isn't even 5 minutes long, and you've dedicated a minute to this single idea. I really figured the song really wasn't going to have much room to do much of anything else, and then I was quickly reminded that they don't know how to play slow, and we ended up having 8 unique sections in just those 4 minutes that followed. Absolutely bonkers. Their speed is just wild. Even when looking at isolated segments, the speed that they're playing, regardless of what the tempo is, just like focusing and imagining how fast they're picking. And it's not tremolo picking. That's the thing that racks my brain, is that it's 16th note, it's equidistant, it is rigid, it is robotic, and it's done at that ridiculous speed. It's just I don't know. I was explained recently. I don't remember where this was. It might have been during the live stream 2 weeks ago. I don't think it was last week. And someone had explained to me that thrash metal came out of speed metal not being fast enough. I wonder what we should call this, because I haven't been exposed to a lot of thrash metal. I've listened to early Metallica albums, a little bit of Slayer, some earlier Megadeth, the big names in thrash, and this just seems faster than anything I've been exposed to from that origin point. This is just ridiculous. But it isn't sloppy, and I think that's the thing that really blows me away. It's just the sheer human ability on display here, even outside of the shredding, even outside of all of the left hand technical stuff of playing the right notes. Just the sheer speed that the right hand picks at is, I don't know, it's mind blowing. But the song isn't slow either. We're just always going to something new. It's not like they are playing fast, but it still takes them, a minute to get through a verse or something like that. Their verses are total out to like 8 to 10 seconds. They still stick within like a typical 8 bar phrase for a section. But 8 bars doesn't take that long when you're playing as fast as this. So it is just speed on top of speed on top of speed, with a nice heavy dose of consistency and roboticism thrown into that mix. And I don't remember feeling this way when we checked out Charging the Void and Recharging the Void. Maybe I did, and I just don't remember it. But yeah, I'm just blown away by the sheer technicality on display here, pushing the human body to its limits. Honestly, that's my big takeaway on this one. Now, it didn't take long for me to remember, oh yeah, these are the Recharging the Void guys. Proggy Thrash. And once I clicked with that, I was like, okay, so I got to rearrange, re-gear, get ready for this, because I didn't know what I was in store for at the beginning. And even after getting the mindset for it, I still had no idea what I was in store for. I didn't know how to approach this at this point. I still don't really know how to approach it. There is a lot being thrown at me here. And it's interesting because the density comes at a very different place than prog metal usually does. You know, when we listen to prog tracks and we get to the end of it, I'm like, I don't know how deep this analysis is going to be because that was a lot. Usually it has to do with layers. We go through, you know, five, six, seven different sections. The structure isn't your typical ABABCB pattern, so, you know, there's extra information to remember there. And then the sections are typically fairly layered. Usually some, you know, melodic elements with counterpoint and you know, dual rhythmic ideas going on. And so there's just a lot to take in at once, but it's slow enough to kind of feel it. Vektor does it from a very different perspective where there's not a lot going on vertically. It's still just two guitars, oftentimes playing the same thing, though they do deviate at times, like we heard in the intro. A guy screaming and some fast drums. There's a bass in there too, but I'm going to tell you, I didn't hear it. Very much EQ'd out of the mix or just pushed way down into it. Um, but like it's just those four parts. The problem is where the a lot of a lot comes into play is that they move through ideas so rapidly it allows them to put so many sections into this song. And it just ends up being this whirlwind. I don't really remember individual moments too strongly because by the time I figured out what I was listening to and began to process it, they had moved on to something else. The song simply moved too fast for my brain. That's the only way I can describe this. And so, you know, I describe this, you know, it's a lot of a lot. I don't know how deep this is going to be, but it's a very different perspective on that phrase than I typically have when listening to progressive musics with a lot of stuff going on. Because that's usually just a lot of stuff going on at the same time. This is just a lot of stuff crammed into a single song. A lot of simple ideas crammed into a single song. This gonna songs like this really push my abilities in the whole first time listen, what do you make of it kind of sphere that I'm in here. I need to listen to more like it and continue to push my brain and how fast I can perceive information because I want to be able to walk away from this and be like, yeah, it was this and this and this and they did this and this all comes together to tell this story and I can't do that right now. What I did get out of this though is some surface level ideas, such as the speed I've already talked about, but also the ways that they shift the speed. We do have some really beautiful retardandos in here, which is a musical term for a gradual slowing down. And there was one section when we started to slow down, I think we did an immediate jump to a slower tempo and then slowly dropped that and then landed in a much slower moment that had a nice groove to it, focused on some lower tone, yeah, some lower range notes. And I was just like, it felt really good to get there. That whole transition was just beautiful. But they're always short lived. I wish we could live in these sections just a little bit longer to provide a nice contrast, but I mean, at least with this song in particular, I'm not sure how wide reaching this is for Vektor. It's like trying to tell Sonic the Hedgehog to go out for a nice jog. He might do it for a second to show he can, but after that, you gotta go fast. And that's what Vektor feels like. They'll definitely slow down for a moment, but they're not too interested in staying there. Even as much as I am, I find that these moments can be really beautiful. They can be evocative harmonically, and it gives a really nice moment to showcase some of the more melodic and harmonic moments that they're capable of that maybe fans, after listening to this type of music for so long, can absolutely hear. To me, it gets lost in the flurry of notes. There's some sections where they're playing fast. I'm like, oh, you know, there's some classical stuff going on there. But for the most part, I really have to listen for it because the notes go by in such a blur that I'm missing a lot of information. I'll tell you what, I've never felt so slow in my life. I'm just listening to moments of this track and I'm like, okay, so that, oh, we're on to something else. Okay, and my brain just isn't keeping up at all. It just, I felt like I was being left behind so often. Um, but yeah, so I do think that they have nice flow though between the temporal shifts that we have in here. We slow down, we speed up, and the song just has a nice ebb and flow to it. It isn't full on full speed all the time. And while the slower sections are a bit shorter, they still provide a little bit of contrast against it, which is a nice palate cleanser from time to time. 5 minutes really isn't that long of a time, but for a song like this, it feels like it's 10 because it's just constantly doing something new. And so having moments where I can just take a breath and be like, okay, I understand what's going on. Oh, and they're dragging me along again. But having that moment to breathe, even if it's just a couple of seconds, is nice. On the harmonic side, though, I do appreciate that they have these really strong rule of cool guitar sounds. The opening verse, the first time that we had vocals in the track, I think that was the reason this was selected for favorite riffs for the theme. I think that was one of the most metal, memorable riffs that were in the track. A lot of stuff in here is just a lot of pedal tone writing. There's that really whirlwindy one. I think I mentioned something along the lines of this riff is doing a lot or something like that. It was kind of all over the place. That one wasn't too memorable. The solos were, pure shred. They're not really riffs though. The opening idea was very cool. I don't know if I would call that a riff though. I don't remember if that was loop based or not. I think that was linear. So yeah, that very first riff that we had, I think, is why this was picked. And yeah, 100%. It is very rule of cool. It's memorable. I can't sing it back to you because it was so fast, and there was so much stuff that I heard after it. But that was the moment I was like, okay, that's probably the one right there. And nothing else during the track made me think that this is a memorable riff. This is something I'm gonna think about later. But they do have a lot of really cool linear style riffs in here as well, where they seem to continue to drag on. I can't really find the loop on a short basis. But that could also just be that they wrote like a 4 bar idea for a 4 bar section, and just the speed of the song means we left it and went on to something else so quickly. So it might have been a loop if the section were longer. There's a lot of pedal tone writing in here though. Just and just really laying into this low note in between ornamental ideas. I mean, that's thrash 101 right there. That's also sort of heavy metal 101. Open string playing is just a prominent way of filling space between ornamental ideas, between the melody itself that usually plays on the higher notes. They just take it to another level though. Um, do I have anything else to say? I mean, the drumming too. I've mentioned a lot about the skill put into the guitar work, but the drums are just absolutely bonkers on here. Again, muscles, stamina, pushing the body to its limits. Everything that I said about the guitars is just as present there. There wasn't any moments of the drums that stood out to me on a compositional level. It's all very functional drumming, but much like playing the functional riffage that we had in a lot of this at this insane speed, there's absolutely no way that I'm looking down on the drums for being as functional as they are in this situation because it's still an absolute feat of physical mastery. Which actually vocals, right? Can we talk about that for a second? They found their own way to be just as extreme as the music is. They are high pitched and compressed, and I think it's just barely bordering on being a shriek, but I'd still put it in the classification of a scream, and just much like plenty of the music in this. It's not really my cup of tea. I prefer a bit of a tamer delivery on it, but I can't be in anything but awe and shock based on just the sheer technicality of performing it. It is, much like everything else, a way of pushing the body to its limits, and especially that shriek we did get at the very end. I'm impressed by all of it. I'm sure the bass work is something I would also be impressed by if I could hear it. They have a very traditional balancing of sound in this, and that the bass just isn't really present in the mix. But I'm sure that it's playing just as fast because a slow bass player would probably be kicked out of this band pretty quickly. And this sort of brings us to the solos. I like them, but I could have used a little bit diversity. It's just shred a lot of the time. It's just constant shred. I do like hearing the melodic change. I like getting away from the pedal tones. I like hearing uh, the way that they craft a melody and the way that they choose notes and move through them. I just wish it was a little slower so I could appreciate the actual feeling of the notes more so than the feeling of the performance, if that makes sense. Most of what I got out of the solo is just the anxiety, the speed, the shred of it all, which is more on the textural side of things, the rhythmic side of things. I really would have liked to appreciate the harmonic qualities of the notes chosen, especially seeing as they had a little bit of a lot of the metal sound harmonically, and we did dip into a classical sound for a couple of sections. So I would have liked to hear what was actually going on note-wise there. But, I think it'd be weird if Vektor slowed down for a nice, smooth, bluesy rock solo. So, yeah, it's probably in their best interest to just keep going fast. I'm going to hit some lyrics, see what's going on there. Is this a track about being pulled through a black hole? Also, before we get into this, lyrically, this is very straightforward. We have verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. Now, I know that the last minute and a half, it felt like forever, but maybe the last minute and a half or 2 minutes of the track had no lyrics at all. It was just instrumental after instrumental after instrumental. So they crammed an A B A B A B pattern into like 90 to 100 seconds of this track. Once you factor in the instrumental back half of the song and the instrumental intro, they really didn't have a lot of space for the vocals. So, despite the song feeling so linear for me, it kind of takes up a folk style pattern somewhere in it. Now, it could be that there was verse, chorus, and then some instrumental thing, and then verse, chorus, and some instrumental thing. And I also think that the verses were all different because I really didn't pick up on too many ideas that felt like they were recycled, at least in the instrumental work. So, if anybody who's more familiar with this wants to map out a little bit of a structure for me, let me know. Because as far as I have, we have our opening 50-second intro, which is, we can call it an A. Usually the intro is different. We'll just call it A. Our verse is going to be B. Then I have no idea how the song progresses from there because it's just big whirlwind to me. But lyrically, this is a very straightforward poem. 6 to 8 lines for the verses, and then a 2-line chorus that's repeated. And it's sort of less like a chorus and more like a refrain. Just the concept that's repeated at the end of every verse. I don't even know if there was a musical section that we could ascribe to being the chorus of it, because it's literally just like 10 words that gets repeated in between each of the verses, at least from a poetic, written out standpoint. Anyways, yeah, back on the topic of what are we talking about? Oh, yeah, black holes. The chorus, the repeated phrase says, souls ripped through the skin into oblivion, reborn into nothingness. The verse, verse 1 says, spiraling into oblivion, mindless thoughts scream my silent cries, a shroud of blood and body parts are my demise, shapeless moments crack my memories. The end has come, now time is empty. The shapeless part really lends into this. But I think the second verse is where I began to form this hypothesis. It says, sucked through the veins of the universe flows the essence of existence, time cluttering, moment shattering, voidless persistence. Aimless gazes stab through my eyes while they set their sights asunder. Lightning strikes upon me when all I've known is thunder. It's about being presented with something that you have no idea how to comprehend, and it is completely altering every way that you perceive existence, while also being described as a vein of the universe being sucked through it. If that doesn't scream black holes to you, I don't know what it does. That's just that right there. Also, the third verse, on and on through eternity, pathways through the galaxies. We were, we are, will we be? Will our cries be heard or echoed endlessly? Yeah, it's about existing in various parallel states, constantly in pain and confusion, hoping to be saved, but knowing you probably won't. That's what this song is to me. They've tried to describe what it's like to be in a black hole. And you know what? I think musically it kind of lines up with that. A lot of the ferocity and speed is just the pain and anxiety of the whole thing, but the song frequently slipping between tempos, gradually speeding up, gradually slowing down, and when you're going down, you're just immediately brought back up to speed. You never really know what's around the corner. There's no pattern to when we change speeds or how we change speeds. Sometimes it's gradual, where we'll slowly start coming down in tempo, and other times you just immediately go right back up to where you were. And like, are you going to immediately jump to a new speed? Are you going to slowly lean into it? You can't know. They're just changing things on a whim, basically. At least that's how I perceive listening to this, and I think that the irregularity and lack of perceptible pattern, especially with the structure of the track, ties into this whole idea of being whipped around in a space that you're not supposed to be, and is completely altering the way that you exist and perceive existence in general. Yeah, it's very thematically cohesive to me. I certainly felt like being thrown through a black hole while listening to this for my first time. Those are my thoughts on Vektor's Oblivion. Let me know what you thought of this track. Did you enjoy it? Was there anything that stood out to you? Anything that I said that you think was wrong? Go ahead and correct me on those or expand on some ideas that I touched on but maybe just didn't dive into far enough. Above the comment section, there's a description box. In there, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. One little tidbit that I forgot to bring up is that reading these lyrics is really difficult. I have no idea how this guy delivers them with such ease, especially the second half of that second stanza. Aimless gazes stab through my eyes while they set their sights asunder. Lightning strikes upon me. There's it gets really tongue twistery, and the dude, I couldn't really make out the syllables, but he's screaming it like it's effortless. So I don't know. Anyways, we do have one more video today, but if you're not interested in whatever that is, I think it's a special selection, but I haven't made up my mind yet. Or I did, and it's in the schedule, and I don't remember. I don't know, dude. I make these videos one at a time. After this, I'm going to be like, oh, what's next? So, anyways, check in for that. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC, as usual. We're going to wrap up this week's theme and explore some brand new music. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.